automatic interest that's payable. Those are the contradiction clauses. Just have a look at it. Liability for rates, taxes, and levies. So in practice, the seller is liable for rates, taxes, and levies. But usually, these PIP contracts, they say the seller is liable until date of acceptance of this offer. And from that date on further, the purchaser is liable for rates, taxes, and levies. So the importance here is that you find that condition, look at those, and see what it stipulates. Unfortunately, you cannot really scratch it out. So it's not for you to negotiate on. Sorry, nah, that is just how it is. That's life on these type of properties. But you have to make your calculations when you do make your offer. You must make provision, for example, for five months, for example, and just do it in your calculation, which will determine your offer. And under these circumstances, because I say the bank does not care how the property looks like, who's staying there, the seller does not deliver any certificate. So that's why it's important that you go view the property to see, is it a vandalized property? Maybe all the copper cables has been stolen. So can I tell you a story? So I bought an when it was the recession year, 2017, 2020. No, I'm lying, 2007 to 2010. And I bought a property there on a sheriff auction. And the property, I sent the estate agent out and he said, yo, this is very nice. Yo, everything looks good and we're going to sell it. Oh my gosh, people. When I sent out the electrician to do the certificate, he came back, he said to me, there are no wirings. I said, how's it possible? He says, no, all the wirings were ripped out of the property. They were ripped out. They just nicely put back all the switches. It was a shock. I had to rewire the whole house. So, yeah, that was a little bit of a dent. Luckily, it was a very small house. So, yeah, just make sure. Maybe test the electricity if you're there. Okay, so let's talk about private auctions. So the previous one was repossessed. They are offers that you make directly to the bank, insolvency and stuff like that, but private auctions. So private auctions are usually held at the premises, which gives you the opportunity to inspect the property while you're there. They are sometimes also vacant, and you can, well, you will see when you're there what the situation is and so on. So in terms of the law, the auctioneer is compelled to read out the conditions prior to the auctions. But people, if you're not familiar, all right, you can phone the auctioneer and just ask them to send you a copy of the contract for that property to be auctioned tomorrow. And just read through it, especially with these conditions that we are going to talk about. Who usually puts the property on private auction? So who's your seller going to be? It's usually deceased estate, insolvent estate, sometimes in divorced estates. There's actually sometimes a condition in the settlement agreement. Sometimes the owner that's going abroad that is immigrating and he has to sell it quickly, or also sometimes PIPs. They will disclose to you on the auction who the seller will be. So what to look out for? People, auctioneer's fee. I'm telling you now, if you are on the private auction, the auctioneer's fee, I don't want to say it's 50-50, but in most instances, it's over and above the purchase price. It's the purchaser's responsibility. Okay, so be mindful. Who's going to pay for that? Because there's no use in bidding up to $1 million and you only had intention of purchasing it for $1 million and then you've got So be mindful. Is VAT applicable? Not on the auctioneer's fees. There will be VAT on the auctioneer's fees in respect of the seller. They will disclose to you. Remember, if VAT is applicable, the problem is your selling price is usually plus VAT. If you are registered as a VAT vendor, then it's fine. Then you can claim it back, the VAT back against your VAT. But yeah, just be mindful that has an effect on your calculations. Is vacant occupation guarantee? So when you go and view the property, you will see whether there's people staying there. You can ask the auctioneer what's going to happen and stuff like that. Usually that is dealt with. Levies, rates, and taxes, as I discussed in the previous session or the previous slide. Who's going to pay for it? And are you liable for it from date of acceptance, depending on who your seller is. People, if it's a deceased estate, insolvent estate might be. Insolvent estate, they might say to you, you have to pay from date of acceptance. A personal deceased estate of a person that has passed away, and a divorced estate, the owner of a quick sale, you will most probably not be liable for any rates, taxes, and levies as from acceptance. Interest on the purchase price pending registration, have a look at it, and then also is there the option for early occupation. All right. So private auctions, let's go. There's some other conditions that you have to look out for. Deposit. Do they require deposit? Will you forfeit if you do not proceed? Oh, and yeah, does the seller deliver guarantees? Once again, depending on who my seller is. If it's a PIP, no certificates. If it's an insolvent estate, no certificates. If it's a deceased estate, if it's a divorce estate, if it is a, what was the other one that we said? If it is a owner for a quick sale, then certificates will be delivered. Find the clause, read it. The seller will not be liable for any defects. These people on auctions, there is no, it's foot to it. It's as is, eh? What you see is what you get. If there's any defects, you are purchasing it with those defects. So if you want, you must make it, you must do your due diligence while you're there. Make your sums and say, okay, this looks bad, this looks bad. Okay, these people, this is about 50,000 of repair work. And auctions do not have suspensive conditions. There is not an option for you obtaining a bond. Why is that the case? It's the same as sheriff auctions, to which we are going to go now to, because it costs money to put properties on auction. Adverts that has to be placed. If you drive down the road, these poll ads, you've got the auctions being there, put up there. Those costs money. So they cannot sell on auction subject to you obtaining a bond. All right? It costs too much money. It's a done deal. So if there's no suspensive conditions in respect of you getting a bond, so it is then an unconditional contract. If you do not comply, you can forfeit your deposit. You will definitely have to pay a deposit, yeah? But you will forfeit the deposit if you cannot proceed or perform in terms of the agreement. Once again, don't go to an auction if you intend to buy with a bond. You have to do pre-qualification that the bond originator can just marry the contract with your already pre-qualified application. Okay, just take note, with this type of auction, there's usually a time period for the seller to accept the auction, to accept the offer on the auction. I don't have enough time, but there's some snacks there too. Also, if a higher offer comes in, for example, they have to go back to you and hear from you. Are you willing to raise your offer? Stuff like that happens. And after auction offers can be made. So I'm going to run out of time. So let's talk about auction, sale, and execution. These are sheriff sales. I do a lot of back-to-backs on sheriff sales. So sheriff sale conditions, they read 99% all the same. So these auctions are held at the sheriff's office. They are scheduled for certain times. You will know, if you start looking around, you will find that out. Your biggest problem with sheriff auction is the inspection of the property prior to auction. That is your problem. That is your challenge that you've got. So be now a clever person. Drive past the property and see how many estate agent boards are in front of it. Because why? Obviously, these people are in distress. COVID happened, life happened. These people were unable to pay their bond. The bank is foreclosed and the property is going on auction. Obviously, they tried to sell their property. Phone the estate agent whose board is in front there and say, Mrs. Estate Agent, I see you are, don't tell them you're going to buy this property on auction. Don't tell them that. I see that you've got a board in front of the house. How long has it been in the market? For what price has it been in the market? Why isn't it selling? Because it could be, obviously, they are overpricing it because they are in distress now. They want to see if they can get as much money to cover all the expenses. Why isn't it selling? What is the market value? Who's staying inside? Is there a tenant? Yep. All of those stuff. You all ask all of your questions. That is your base. What is the condition of the property? That is, ask that. Are there any defects that you know of? Okay, thank you very much. I will come back to you. Phone the other estate agents, ask the same questions, compare your notes. All right. There is a sheriff commission that is payable. It's actually, when I bought on sheriff auctions 10, 12 years ago, it was maximum 10,000. It's now already going up to 40,000. And you will pay a 10% deposit. It's a non-negotiable aspect. That will not go on to the next auction if you don't go into the cubicle and do your EFT there. Okay? And then you do have the risk of forfeiting your deposit should you not comply. Once again, I did not put in here. Oh, no, there I did put it. Okay, it's Voetstwits. Okay, I'm not going to explain it. Terms and conditions to look out for, not that you need to look out for, because all of them are the same. Vacant occupation is not guaranteed. We've discussed this. Usually, I put here 30 days. I had a little bit of an argument with a sheriff attorney on Friday, and when I read that contract, it was 21 days to deliver guarantees. You will be liable for interest on the purchase price if you delay the transfer. Now, that is what my fight was about with the sheriff attorneys on Friday, because they asked me to pay the rates and taxes, which was a whopping 75,000, and I paid it 10 days later than what they requested, and the interest kicked in on the purchase price. So just be mindful that if there is interest on the purchase price, no certificates will be delivered. Those are the compliance certificates. And people, only on sheriff auctions, you will be liable for all arrears, rates, taxes, levies, homeowners. Okay? So when you make your offer, you must make sure that you know your sums. They do disclose amounts on auction, and then you can just plus another 10 or 15%, because by the time they draft the conditions, they obtain an outstanding amount, but it goes on auction like 3 months later. So it increases. So they do disclose these amounts, but that you must just do your sum backwards and find out. I mean, my one client bought a property for 10,000 Rand because the arrears levies was like 200. Okay. Then what's different on sheriff auctions are the risk of the property passes to you with the fall of the hammer. So you can, with your contract, go to the occupant and say, hello, I've just bought this property. Look, I've paid my commission, my deposit. Sorry, the risk has passed over to me. Who are you? And if you want to stay here, you must pay me rent, please. And then you can negotiate and negotiate. So sometimes it's a disgruntled owner staying there. Be nice, because they've been most probably through a difficult time, but rather negotiate and make war with these people. Otherwise, you have an eviction on your hands, okay? And once again, it's an unconditional contract. What does it mean, people? You cannot make it subject to a bond. You must have your finances in place. Oh, we're almost there now. So let's talk about back-to-back transactions. So what is a back-to-back transaction? This is not the intention of the Property Academy. It's for back-to-back, not necessarily. I don't know whether they touch on it, but the intention of the Property Academy is to help you to build your property portfolio by buying. But sometimes things happen that you have to sell it on for whatever reason. Maybe you cannot get your finances in place, then you rather sell it on. So there are two types of contracts with back-to-backs. So you can actually do a back-to-back on any type of offer that you've purchased. So I'm now squinching here because on insolvencies, they don't like it. There's actually a clause in the insolvency contracts when you make your offer to the curator of the insolvency estate that says you are not entitled to sell the property on. But we still do, and we still manage it. As long as your sell on, do not delay the first. That's why you need me with my very convincing personality to talk to these attorneys and say, don't you worry, just get your stuff in order. I will be ready for you. So that's why they say they do not accept guarantees from third parties, but we've got a way to win it. We've got a way to talk to them. So here's what you have to look at. So you can do a back-to-back on any transaction. Let's now, if the fact is that if you do a private offer, you can have an exit clause. if you've got on private transactions. Now you can have an exit clause of having a bond. If you are making an offer with the intention to resell it, maybe, then you must allow yourself enough time to perform. For example, you will give yourself not 30 calendar days to get a bond, but 30 business days to get a bond. Okay? And maybe if you want to renovate it, then you can request consent for renovation prior to registration. So this can also be done with sheriff auctions, because you get immediately risk passes to you on the day of the auction. So you can already, if you've paid it, you can get access. You can start doing renovations to sell it on. So don't get confused. In certain instances, it might take a little bit longer. So you've got your first transaction. But the important part is your selling of the property. So remember, when you sell it on, now, just remember with back-to-back transactions, we do not physically take transfer and then sell it on. It might happen that you have to, but under the normal circumstances, we have the contract here and then we sell it on. And when we put the two transactions together, and it goes together through the deeds office. Okay? So this is what you need to look out for. On your reselling, you are the seller now. Do not overpromise. Don't tell your purchaser that he can move in the 1st of July, but where you are purchasing on a private transaction, and now in our example now, the seller said to you, but there's a tenant and he can only vacate the 1st of August. Don't do that. Then rather put it here on the right, when you're selling on, you say you can occupy at registration. And then closer to the time, you can renegotiate an earlier occupation. Okay. On your reselling, you must allow shorter time period for compliance for bond applications. Okay? Because why? Because you've allocated yourself here 30 days, for example, on your private transaction, or if you've got a sheriff transaction that's running here and you are now pressed to sell it, don't give your buyer 30 days to get a bond, 7 days, 10 days to get a bond. Okay? Because you have to get your contracts in as fast as possible. And yeah, and we're going to talk about other conditions as well. So just give them a short time period. If you don't get a bond, sorry to hear, there's another one in line. You must make it subject to the registration of the property into your name. That is one of the conditions that you have to put in. Why? Because if you do not put that clause, that specific clause in here that says this contract is subject to the registration of the property into the seller's name, then you are splitting the two transactions. Because now let's say something happens on the first transaction and it's cancelled, then you're going to have consequences on this transaction. You cannot give transfer because you cannot get transfer. Then you're going to be liable for wasted cost and agent's commission if there was an agent involved. You must have it in. Include additional clauses for continuous marketing. We're going to talk about that. Include additional clauses for property to protect yourself against defects. So these are my clauses. This is my last slide, I think. Yes. Okay, so additional clauses for back-to-back. This offer is subject to the simultaneous transfer of the property into the seller's name. So sometimes it happens, I've got clients, they buy on sheriff auctions, they've got the money, they want to take transfer because they know they have to do a lot of renovations and then they're going to sell it on, maybe just rent it out for 6 months and sell it on. So, but then they pay the money and then they can take transfer. But sometimes it happens that he sells it quickly and it goes simultaneously. It's important to put this in. It is. It is recorded that the seller has never occupied the premises or the property and bears no knowledge of any latent or patent defect to the property. You don't know what is wrong with this property. Don't guarantee. Please don't guarantee, especially if you're selling it on by an estate agent and they've got a defect list. Don't know. Don't say, I guarantee the roof is good. I guarantee this. Please don't do that. You are going to be in for damages because you don't know what the condition is. Then you can say further, purchaser has examined the property and he will have no claim against the seller for any repair or damage to the property with a latent or patent. That is just to protect you. And then the others clause is a scary clause. You have to be very brave, but you have to do this if you are speculating with property, buying and selling and buying and selling. So in law, there's the principle of first in time is first in right, which means also you can do it that way around. So the contract that's dated first is the first one in right. That's why you have to make the time period short. The second contract cannot be enforceable until the first contract has lapsed. Lapsed in the sense of did not get a bond. Okay? So you have to wait for the time period to run out before you can proceed with the second offer. So let's just talk about this clause. I'm going to first talk about this one that I'm talking about now. So let's say you have now forgotten to put in this very lengthy clause in. So what happens now is that first in time is first in right. So you've got your first offer. You did not complete this clause, so you have to wait it out. Now a second contract comes in. Nobody says you cannot accept the second contract. The second contract you will accept and say, this is a further, don't say second or third, this is a further contract and subject to the lapsing of all prior agreements. Then you'll have to wait it out in time. But then all other ones has to be accepted. So then if this one didn't have any clause, then this is your first contract. It has to lapse before you can go ahead with the second one. But the second one also, if you now remember, I would put in this one. If you did not remember, you would have put it in. This is a further contract and subject to the lapse of the first one. And then this is a third contract or a further contract and subject to the lapsing of all prior ones. But then the date of the agreement determines the order of the contracts. Now, what we try to do, because we are going back to back and we don't have time for contracts to run out, we put in this very scary clause that says, pending the fulfillment of all suspensive conditions of this agreement, the seller shall be entitled to market the property and accept other offers. And then we sidestep the first in time, first in right that says the seller shall be entitled to continue with the first offer of which all suspensive conditions have been fulfilled, notwithstanding the date of the agreement, that all other agreements shall automatically lapse and become null and void. The thing is, you have to put this clause in all your contracts. That is important. Okay, so people, that's me. Thank you very much for your time. I hope I have not confused you too much, and I hope I have enlightened you, that you've got more confidence when you read your contract, how to complete and look at contracts. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Leonora. That was fantastic. And there are loads of questions in that chat box. So I'm hoping that you're going to help us manage those questions later on. But very, very exciting, lots of energy. So thank you for that, Leonora. Ladies and gents, was that good? Let me know in the chat box, was that a good session? Leonora, I can see that you just love OTPs.
Yes, Andrew, I do love it. I'm very passionate about it because I'm passionate about my work, and I'm also passionate about, you know, the type of transactions. This is not a normal transactions that we do, but what I've found is that the more the students know about the contracts, the less consequences we've got. And I just want to say that people, if you can grab onto the OTP course and get more familiar with contracts, do that. Do not, after 28 years, contracts comes automatically to me. It does not mean it's going to come automatically to you. Please grab on the OTP course, familiarize yourself, because then you've got more options and more, you are more confident in doing what you want to do.
I agree 100%, because that's the issue. Most people that do come along and that come to the offer to purchase, they get cold feet, they get bullied into signing someone else's OTP and don't understand. And Leonora, that's when they give you a call, and sometimes it's too late at that stage. Hence, get the education before and understand what you're getting yourself into. Know where to look in the OTP, because that'll give you more confidence and you're going to mitigate your risk. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Andrew, you're correct.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leonora, and we'll see you later on. If you're wondering what Leonora was talking about, literally like this week, we've just completed our next property course through the academy called the Offer to Purchase course, where we got Leonora, we got Ria Nordia on there. We've got a whole bunch of property investors, estate agents, talking around all the different type of offer to purchases. Remember that this course is included in option 1 and option 2 of the bundle package that we put together for you. Okay, fantastic. So what have we done so far? We've now covered the first 6 steps of the signature solution. So now we're at the point where you now understand how all the OTPs work, all the different types, what you can do, what you can't. do, which is fantastic. Now, before we bring up Robin Booth, I do want to introduce our guest speaker for you today. This gentleman has been on stage on the SA Property Investors Network stage every year for I don't know how many years now, and he brings a wealth of experience in this subject. There's no one in South Africa that I personally know that knows as much as this gentleman. Can you all please give a massive round of applause to Mohammed Gadi? And we're going to talk about student accommodation. We're going to talk about multi-lets. So Mohammed, welcome.
Thank you